What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode here of Radio Wigwam's Palangi Studio of Rock every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 UK. Today, we have a very special guest, musician, actor, AJ in the bill. Can I call you AJ? Is that okay, man?
I ask all of my friends who can't pronounce Andras to call me AJ.
I was going to
So
say, I got Andras Jones in the building. I'm Italian, so I think I can get it. I think I can get it.
yeah,
But I was like,
yeah.
AJ, man, what's going on? Thanks for so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So what's going on today? Where are you exactly today here?
Well, I'm in Los Angeles, California. That's
There you
Los
go. I
Angeles
see
out
the guitar
there.
case.
I was trying to show you like the sort of flora and fauna
Yeah,
of Hollywood
those
Heights.
palm trees.
But yes, I'm in Los Angeles, actually in Hollywood, California. It's 4th of July. It's very hot, and as soon as I finish this up, I'm going to go hang out at a house where I'm helping out with some dog sitting that has a very nice pool.
There you
And
go. Just relax the
I'll
rest of the
be
day,
I'll
right?
be cool by 3 p.m. Yeah.
Now, anybody who doesn't know this guy out there, he's been an actor since the 80s. He's released albums. He's got a show called Radio 8 Ball, which I love that name. Do you actually like to play pool?
It's not, well, it is not a billiards based
Okay,
show.
I
And if
know.
I had to choose, I would choose ping pong. I'm a bit more of a reactive person. I'm
Okay,
better at games of quick reaction than games of strategy, as my pretty much as my entire career would be evidence.
okay. And you're I know you're not a karate kid. I know that.
Nor am I a karate man. I am just a martial arts icon on film.
There you go.
And I only say that because when I'm at cons, there are a lot of people who are genuine martial artists who come up to my table for where I'm there with my fellow Nightmare on Elm Street cast members,
Yep.
and they tell me that Rick, the character I played in Nightmare on Elm Street 4, the Dream Master, was their inspiration for getting into martial arts, and then
Really?
they're immediately disappointed to find out that I'm a phony. I never yeah,
I
my
couldn't
experience with
tell. I couldn't tell,
martial
man. I could
arts.
never tell.
I'm definitely a better actor than I am a martial artist.
That's okay. And you were in a
Yeah.
slew of horror movies, TV shows over the years.
You
And
call it a
then,
slew, some might call it a slurry, but yes.
okay. A McFlurry? No. We were talking, I was like, yeah, this is a casual show. We might go into what food and stuff you might like here. So now we're talking about McFlurries.
You brought it up, not me.
Yeah. What so out there, I've always wanted to ask, and this is not really a question I bring up because I don't have a lot of actors and musicians on the show. What's a diet like? Like, do you try to stick to a certain diet between like a movie and music? Because I know singing, especially for me, I can only eat certain things without.
You mean actual food?
Yeah,
What is
actual
the
food.
diet for? I think the diet for a musician and for an actor is pretty much the same. For the best diet is the best diet for a human, which would probably be a diet high in vegetables and starches and lean and an occasional lean meats
Yeah,
and
yep.
a lot of water, not a lot of sugary drinks and fried food. Not to say that I stick to that, but
Me too.
this is what my dietitian suggested to me. But I don't know what if you're talking about trying to get into either the bulked up Tom Cruise body or
Yeah,
into
very
the
specific.
totally wayfish sort of like, I don't know, I don't want to call it Iggy Pop wayfish, but that sort of emaciated
Yeah,
cool thing. Both of them seem like extremes that are not particularly healthy, but it works for those guys. So
yeah,
who
yeah,
am I to say?
yeah.
Yeah.
I know for me, like dairy, like when I go to sing, I can't eat a lot of dairy, you know. Afterwards is fine.
No, I want to coat my vocal cords with brie
Really?
right before I go on. Yeah,
So you want all
yeah,
that stuff up there.
yeah. I go full Tom Waits.
There
Yeah,
you go.
I find that most singers lack the rasp that I like from my vocalists.
Yeah.
So I'd like to jam a piece of cheese in a lot of people's face.
Okay. I noticed that. I do. I call it the grit. I like the grit going on. When I was younger, I
I
was
once
like,
had the
go
Oh,
ahead.
go on.
I was gonna say,
Oh, I
so
was gonna you first.
so you go. You're the guest.
Well, I was just going to say that when I had the good fortune once to be in a recording session that Pete Townsend was at,
Oh wow.
where they were recording a bunch of his music, and I was lucky enough to be in the studio. And it's a long story, but the part that is germane to this is that, and I've always used this. He walked up to somebody's guitar amp. It was like they were recording the Broadway cast album for Tommy. And he went up
Okay.
to one of the guitarist's amps and he said, "Throw a bit of vomit on it. Throw a bit of vomit on it." And I feel like a lot of singers don't have enough vomit in their voice.
Yeah, especially for rock and roll.
Yeah, just like, yeah, just I think for anything, you know, like even on like it's one of the things that bothers me about Broadway singing. I think what Pete Townsend was referring to, that there's a kind of open voice loneliness that never gets into a place where it's real. I mean, it's like almost like bad acting. It's like if you imagined an actor who only spoke like this and blah 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 and never had a moment of emotional crack in their
Yeah.
facade.
Yeah,
And
where's
that's
the
what a lot of,
realness?
and I'm not, you know, how have I started off by being an old man on my lawn, shouting about modern singers? Was because he brought up the cheese, man. You know,
That's it right there. Now you just
yeah.
you released a new album this year, right? And I just watched the music video and for Record Store, and it's true there is hardly any record stores anywhere. I think we have one in like a 100-mile radius, maybe two or something like that.
Where are you based?
Upstate New York, north of Albany.
North of Albany. What
Yep.
city?
Albany's
What town?
technically a city, but near Glens Falls,
Okay,
New York. Yeah.
New Glen Falls. So when you say there's only one record store, you mean in Albany or in New Glen Falls?
This is like Glens Falls to Poughkeepsie, so it's probably like a 2.5 hour radius. There's probably two record stores,
Wow.
maybe three out there, but it is very rare. And all the FYEs closed. I used to have my CD in FYE, and they all closed too.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like,
Yeah.
okay. And there's movie stores too, and there is no movie stores anymore. I filmed a scene in one of my indie movies in the one of the last movie stores we have here to that's another thing. There is no more physical product. And I was just like, what do you think about that? You know, everyone's like, oh, we love the digital, but to have something in your hands, and to put it in a system and watch it, you own it, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely, well, I made an LP, so I obviously believe in physical media.
Yep. And your
And
record
I
has an
think
old
that,
school vibe
oh,
too. I was gonna say very, very kind of like Beatles and classic-y kind of 70s stuff going on too.
I think a lot of me is firmly planted in the 20th century aesthetically. So
Yep.
that makes sense. I really made an effort when in recording it to break the grid wherever I could. I was recording a lot of it. Several of the songs I recorded remotely with people during COVID, sending tracks around, and it really frustrated some of the people when they would get a track that it, they could play to it. It was in time, but there were places where it didn't fit the grid.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as I
Yeah.
was working on it and started hearing more about AI, it even encouraged me to go that way even further. Like sort of the one thing that AI can't do is do things wrong that also work.
Yes. The
And
little
I think that's true with
imperfections out there.
yeah,
Yeah.
the little human imperfections that you can make perfect, but you first have to have the mistake and then struggle with, oh wait, oh, I really like that, but it's a little bit off. We're not going to auto tune it. So what can we do? Or like there's a little bit of a rhythmic hiccup that doesn't work here. Well, instead of just fixing it, maybe we come up with a percussion part that offsets it and hits the place where we wanted to hit. And then you get something that's original that you would
Yeah.
never get
You play on
just
the
by
beat,
saying,
but
oh, we
off
want
the
to
beat.
hit it on the, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I think that's probably an old, like a 20th century a vestige of 20th century thinking.
Well, it's real, right? That's actually what you do when you play out live, right? Somebody hits a thing, you're not going to press stop and say, "Oh, can we go back and remove that snare?"
No, you're just going to hang out afterwards and yell at each other.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, you didn't get it right, man. Oh,
Look, I'll play what you want to play, or I won't play anything at all. Right.
exactly. What are some of the places you played? I seen on a video you're playing the Whiskey, which is very famous.
I played the Whiskey A Go Go last week. That went really well. Oh man, I played all over the place. I got a show coming up on the 26th of July at the Viper Room, also in Hollywood.
Yep.
I have a couple of fun gigs this month. I'm going to be playing a yearly event that they have, which is the Harry Nilsson sing along. It's going to be at Gold Diggers on July 9th. That's in Hollywood as well. And it's going to be a bunch of people all just covering the music of Harry Nilsson.
Okay.
I'm going to be doing the song Turn On Your Radio. Um, and then in early August, I'll be playing at the International Pop Overthrow Festival, also an LA show.
Wow.
But they hold events all over the world, really, and I played at a bunch of them. And then I'll be flying to New York to play the Fever Dream Lounge on August 6th with Dino Stamatopoulos and Andrea Whitkins, and that's
Is
just
that
sort of
New York
like a
City?
that's New York City, yeah.
Okay. I'm like
Hey, you should
4
come
hours
out.
from the city.
Hey, drive down, man. I mean, it's just, yeah, I know. It's a hefty drive, but it will be a great show. Dino Stamatopoulos. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's mostly known as a comedy writer. He was he wrote for Conan O'Brien and for Saturday Night Live, and he was one of the creators of the TV show Community, and he played the character Starburns
Okay.
in that. And yeah, he's just sort of in the world of comedy, dark comedy and comedy writers. He has a sort of iconic place, and he writes these very weird songs, and he'll be playing. And then a really great songwriter named Andrea Whitkins will also be playing, and they both were guests on the Radio 8 Ball show,
Okay.
which you mentioned a little bit. It's a show where we answer questions by picking songs at random and interpreting them like musical tarot cards. And so we call it the Radio 8 Ball Show, or Consulting the Pop Oracle. And you can find all about that at
Yeah.
radio8ball.com. And if you were curious, you could look at the episode where Andrea Whitkins has been the musical guest, with her music providing the answers to the questions from our guests, or the episode we had with Dino Stamatopoulos
Okay.
and his band, Sorry About Everything.
And you do all
So
these in person, you said, and explain how you record this, because this I want people to know.
The Radio 8 Ball Show. Well, we've done it. I've done it in so many different formats. It
Okay.
started on the radio in Olympia, Washington, on terrestrial radio, and we would just have, actually, in the earliest iteration of the show, we would just play CDs on shuffle function in response to someone would call in and ask a question. Should I move to
Yeah, yeah.
audio? And then we'd play a CD on shuffle function, and the song would randomly play, and then we'd interpret that song as the answer to their question. And then we started adding musical guests into it, who would bring in a list of 8 songs numbered 1 through 8, and then people would pick a number between 1 and 8. Then we started doing it live on stage, where we'd have a big wheel with the numbers 1 through 8 on it.
That's cool.
And then started doing. Then for many years, I did it as a show on Starburns Starburns podcasts in LA. That's I got that gig through Dino. And in that, we did it in a really, really high-end studio that they had there, a high-end podcast and audio studio, where they recorded like all of the voiceovers for all the audio for like the first couple seasons of Rick and Morty and other things,
Oh,
like
okay. Oh,
other
yeah.
major series. So they had great mics and great engineers, and most of those are all of those are up as podcasts on our site,
Okay.
radio8ball.com. That's radio the number 8ball.com, all one word. But we're here to talk about my record. I should probably tell people the name of it. It's
Yes.
called Recognize, De-Escalate, and Decode. That's, I don't know. I haven't done a lot of these interviews for a lot of years. I kind of stopped doing podcast interviews because all anyone wanted to talk about was Nightmare on Elm Street. and I pretty much answered I feel like I've answered almost every question that
In the
could be
universe.
asked about that, just because. So it was sort of, it led to a lot of sort of uncomfortable situations where I wasn't bringing much energy to it. But since I
Yeah.
came out with this record, I've gotten re-excited, reinvigorated about the idea of sharing myself with the
Yeah.
world through venues like this.
Yeah, you want people to listen to it and have their own opinions and feel certain things. And unfortunately or unfortunately, as you know, like you have to do some press, you got to do radio, you have to do certain things, or even social media nowadays.
When you're inspired about something and excited to share it, it's not a burden or a drag at all.
Exactly.
It's only a drag when you sort of feel like, I don't know what I have to say. I mean, I'm only the feeling that you're going to talk to someone who's very excited about something. Like they haven't asked this question about Nightmare on Elm Street before. They haven't been like, so do you really do karate? But I've had that question asked to me so many times that even if I try and be like, find the most excited way to say, no, I don't really.
Yeah.
It's, you know what I mean?
I,
It's,
I know certain things that the audience doesn't. So it's like I try to ask questions on this radio show that they might not know. I might know, but I kind of act dumb a little
yeah.
bit sometimes. But I know more. So yeah, because I'm like, he probably is not going to come on and talk about Nightmare 4. Like, I don't know that much about Nightmare 4 to that extent. I've watched all the movies, but I was going to say this, you're going to find this hilarious. When I was a kid, okay,
Mhm.
you remember the TV show Angel, Buffy and Angel?
Yeah.
So I thought you were David Boreanaz
A lot of people have made that comparison.
when I was really young.
I,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was young, but no,
Well, if you saw us standing next to each other, I think you might find him to be significantly taller.
yeah, well, he had the trench coat too. So I was like, well, but
Well, that I had the trench coat first.
yeah,
I had the
you
trench
did.
coat before him, and I had it before Christian Slater.
You did. Yep. But what I was
So,
gonna say is that I really love personally, I really love the movie. I love the character. I love everything that you did with it. And for me as a kid, because I love Bruce Lee and all that kind of stuff too. So there wasn't, I don't think there's another horror movie that has karate in it like that. So I think it's something pretty special in the 80s horror genre. It's not like, they're gonna karate Michael Myers to death. Even Buster Rhymes just did a little thing there.
man, I really blew it. If I had, it's unfortunate that I love music so much and that has been my calling, because if I was really strategic, I would have committed myself to becoming at least a decent martial artist and maybe opened up a string of Rick Johnson dojos,
Yeah.
and I'd be ranking it in. But I'm a bad capitalist.
So music is
Bad
that
capitalist.
your like your first passion? Like you started out with that first before acting?
I don't. I see. I was funny. People say that. If you sing in front of people, you're acting. You're an actor.
True. There's a presence. There's a yeah.
I mean, if you're not, then it's going to be a less. I mean, even if then maybe you're a very subtle actor, but just the what is it? Acting is you're saying words that that have been rehearsed, that have been written before,
Yeah.
and trying to create a moment.
Yeah.
And if it's a script, then it doesn't have music to it, but it still has rhythm to it.
Yeah.
And it's actually, if you watch good actors, uh, recently I had a, I didn't get cast in it, but someone was interested in casting me in a musical that I don't really think they got made, about the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, and they were interested in having me play Johnny, in
That would have been
uh,
cool.
court scenes. And I tried to get his voice, but his voice is, when you start to try and learn an actor's voice, you realize how much it is a musical instrument.
It is.
And
Yep.
especially if you don't have that particular musical instrument, you're like, oh wow, I'm playing a tenor sax and he's playing a baritone.
Yeah.
And you don't really think of him as a low voice guy. But when you start to learn, even just trying to learn the things he said on, I was just learning his testimony, but there is a musicality to
Mm-hmm.
the way he delivers, and it includes going up and going down, and that is singing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
so it's funny because people are always asking me, which do you do first, which came first? I mean, in the sense that you have to be cast in something to be an actor. Of course, singing came first because I would do that walking home from school. I'd make up
Yeah.
little songs about my day walking home from school, and
Did you
never with the
immediately
idea of
play
singing them for
learn
anyone.
oh god. Did you immediately play
No,
the guitar?
I know I learned lots of different instruments, but never with any passion. Like sort of like my parents put me in piano lessons, and I learned how to play other things, but I never really. I wouldn't. It was nothing like what I think of as the experience of playing music
Yeah. Yeah.
until in my high school years, I got really into the Who when I really wanted to learn how to play that music, and I got a job and I bought myself a guitar, and I found a teacher in Belmont, Massachusetts, a guitar teacher who would just teach me songs. I was like, I don't want to learn music theory. I don't want to learn, don't give me lessons. I want to bring you a song and you teach me how to play it. And I'll bring you another song and you teach me how to play it. And that's when it all just took off. When I could
Okay.
start playing Beatles or Who songs, or um, what was the first song I learned was on guitar was We Can Work It Out. And then or maybe it was 8 days a week. Yeah, she taught me 8 days a week because I wanted to learn how to play Behind Blue Eyes.
Yeah.
And she's
That's a
like,
good
well,
song.
in order to learn how to play Behind Blue Eyes, you're gonna have to learn some chords first. Let's start with that. Um, and yeah, and then it was off to the races.
That's cool. I'm teaching one of my
Writing
students that song right now.
Behind Blue Eyes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
She just got it all the way up to the chorus. Yep.
it's great, and it teaches you everything. It teaches you bar chords. It teaches you finger picking, or
Pick picking. Yep.
flat picking, and I think it also teaches you about song structure, because it has such a pronounced bridge section.
Yeah. And
Uh,
melody. Too.
yeah,
A lot of melody. So I was listening to your record and Olympia's Secret. That's the one that kind of stuck out with me. Kind of I
oh,
got a 90s kind of TV show a little bit vibe too, like a 90s recorded feel. And I was
that's
wondering
cool.
what inspired you to write that one?
Well, I wrote that in the '90s. I wrote that song in probably like 1995,
Okay.
and carried it around for a long time. Um, and in my mind, it was always kind of a Who song, but also kind of a Laws song. Remember the band The Laws that did the song uh, "There She Goes," and
Oh yeah. Yep.
that was later covered by Sixpence None the Wiser. But yeah, and they had their first record was very influential to me. So I always sort of thought of it in that vein. But then when I ended up working on it, I ended up working towards the end of the production with Ken Stringfellow from the Posies, and he uh, was a serious contributor to that track and the song "Get Out of My Head" in particular.
Okay.
It, he's the main not the main vocal, but the sort of screaming Olympia vocal. That's him, and he was half of the band the Posies, which was very much a '90s band. So
Yeah. Yeah.
between his guitar playing and his vocals on it, I think that probably gives it some of that '90s stamp that you're probably
Yeah. I picked that right out too,
noticing.
probably within 20 seconds. I was like, and to hear that you were actually made it up in the 90s, I'm like, okay, makes sense now. You said explain to so you record some things on a task cam.
Yeah, uh, everything. Hold on, I'll go grab it.
Yeah, that's cool. So everybody here, we're tuning in here, Radio Wigwam. All right, every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern
I'm
time.
back.
He's
This
back.
this
AJ's
thing right
back in the
here.
building.
This thing right here. This little Tascam 4-track digital. This is like everything that I recorded on my own tracks
That's for
except for
dialogue for like movies. Yeah.
yeah. And I use this for my podcasts. I tried to work with Pro Tools, but it's just like it was so annoying. I'm sure
Yeah.
it's great if you really want to be it's sort of the same attitude I took towards guitar playing. You know, I don't want to become a recording engineer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
We
true.
live in a time where I mean, if I record my vocal onto a nice mic here and it goes direct into that, it's not as great, I'm sure, as if I'm running through some fantastic preamp. And I know, like, I have friends who have studios. If I need to recut a vocal or recut a part, I can go to their studio
Yeah.
and just do that. But if I'm in the creative process of writing, I don't want to have to go to somebody's place, and I don't want to spend a year and a half ineffectively recording on a system so that I can learn to become good at that system.
Yeah.
Um,
Or spending money with
and
a lot of different studios and producers and all that jazz.
I mean, the main thing, I mean, yes, the money, but even if you have friends who are willing to play with, you know, to let you use their studios, you still, there's a different kind of creativity that you can get into when you're in your room alone
Yes.
and nobody's like, I got to go to lunch, you know, nobody's
There's
like,
no
okay, that's good
rush.
enough. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, maybe it's good enough, but I'm not done singing. Maybe I want to sing that take 20 times beyond when it's good enough, not because it's not because I think that I need to get it better than it was 20 takes ago, but because this is the last time I'm going to sing this song on, you know, in this setting and I'm having fun.
That's
You
true.
know?
Never thought of it
You
like
know?
that. Yeah. I'm always
I mean, a
like,
lot of this record I made from the standpoint of I want this experience to be a good one, making
yes.
it.
Yeah. You want to have fun with it.
Yeah, because who knows who's going to listen to it. And mostly I know that I'm going to listen to it. And I know that from other records I've made, even when it's good, sometimes it's good, but there's this memory of like, oof,
Yeah.
I really had to just be a kind of a dick that day to push them to get that. And like with this record, I had a very firm thing. Like if anyone in the studio was like, hey, I'm not, okay, let's call the session. We'll come back as long as you aren't going to charge me for the extra time. Like if you shut it down, we can come back to another time. I don't want anyone in the room who's like, you know, God, this sucks. I don't want to be here because there
Yeah.
was no deadline. It took me, you know, probably 15 years to make this record.
Okay.
Uh,
So I know you've released
I
other
mean,
songs and records too,
oh yeah, yeah. This is my eighth full length album since I was a wee boy of
but this one took the
18 or 19.
longest, sounds like.
Yeah, well, I kind of stopped performing or being inspired to perform for a long time, but I kept writing.
Hmm.
And at a certain point, it made sense to start building a record, you know. So I started building it in 2000, probably 15 was one of the, we recorded the first track that we recorded for it, but I've been writing, like I said, some of these songs go back to 1995.
I think I remember you mentioning a little bit of it because I was like, so funny story, folk. We were in this contest for it was like a website called like You Now or something. And we both
Yeah.
played and we tied and we had to split like $50 between the both of us. And I was like, and I had to ask you, I go, are you the guy from the Nightmare movie? And he's like, I'm the guy. And I go, no way. But it was so that's how I met you basically off of there. And then um I thought I would get into a little bit more film stuff, and then I just went totally music for like 10 years. And then I was like, hey man, I know it's been like 10 years, but I've always wanted to interview you and talk to you. And I'm like, now I actually have a radio show. It goes out, does this and this. I'm like, I got a platform more than like, hey, can I just call you for a few minutes? So,
I should find it. There, I had a song that I wrote for that called "On You Now."
okay.
Like it was sort of a
Oh man.
it was almost like it was some sort of like almost like a double entendre, like "I'm on you now, I'm on you now"
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yep. I remember that because I was
Um,
like, I think I'm gonna do this song. You're like, I'm just gonna do it, man. You're like, I'm just gonna do it. I remember I sent you, I think, two of my music videos or something. You're like, oh, that was cool too. I appreciate you looking at that kind of stuff because
Of
I'm like,
course.
some of the actors and stuff nowadays, and they're like, no, I don't, no. They like music, but they don't really take the time to maybe get into anything but what they're doing too, a lot of times.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's probably, I mean, I think we can all be guilty of that sometimes. Sometimes we get caught on our good
Yeah,
days when we have
real
attention for
busy.
other people, and some days we're like, and I mean, we actors, I mean, just we humans.
Yes.
It's just
Yep.
like, yeah, not today. Not today.
Yep.
I'm dealing with some shit, man. You don't want to
Yeah. Well, you
know.
got some projects going. You're recording some more songs or something, you know?
hmm
You do that
Um,
where you record songs, you try to not be on like social media or check messages as much, or does that distract you?
no, that's, I mean, it's sort of this, the wonderful and dangerous thing about um, getting into a creative headspace or like if I'm working on a record, if I'm working on a recording, I will be gone. Like my phone's off. You won't, like, people who need to hear from me will not hear from me until
You're done.
the next day, or
Yeah.
like, because I do get into an obsessive place. For me, it's not always just about getting it right, although that's part of it. But it's also, there's a real joy in the journey towards getting it right. And I've had enough songs, I've done enough recordings that there's a part of me that knows that you can never get it right. And it's also always kind of right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
and so it's, again, it comes back to the experience. Like with this record, I made a very strong rule for myself that I was going to record one song at a time because I wanted each song to really
Almost treat it as a
capture,
single, right? Kind of
yeah,
just like,
and to capture that time and not get into this thing of like, oh, we got to finish 4 songs today. It's like, no, we're going to take a year to do this one,
yeah.
and that means like, okay, we get together once, and then 2 months later we're going to get together again, and in that time period I'm having time to listen to it and think about it and live with it. And sometimes we'd get, there's some songs, there's a song on the record called Dylan and Moses that I basically, that what's on the record is the third attempt,
Yeah.
because there were things that weren't right, and there and a lot of times if your goal is to finish it, then that seems like a lot of wasted busy work.
Yeah. There's a
But to
lot of pressure
me,
too.
it's more like that's how I know that that song is exactly how I like it,
Yeah.
because
You can't
I
make a
was
song
willing.
work. You know what I mean? You have
Yeah,
to,
there's the song Action that starts the record, was just, the first version was great, but it was just a little bit fast, and I really wanted the record to start to have a real slow wave kind of feel.
yeah.
But and if you're just trying, and I've made records where, we got our rhythm tracks, that's our rhythm tracks, now we build around them, and that's a great way to make a record too. But in this case, I wanted everything to feel exactly the way that would please me, and
Yeah.
that
Sounds like it was a
that was the
different
thing.
process. Yeah. I usually
Yeah.
get the drums back. I'll record a song, get the drums back, delete everything, and then pocket it really tight to the drums. And that's kind of, you have to stay in those guidelines of those drums, right? Because those parts can't change once they send it to you, and then you
See, it's funny.
work from there.
I almost do the opposite.
Okay,
Is I get the rhythm the way I get it, the rhythm track the way I want with my guitar and vocal, and then the drummer's going to play to that.
I got
That's where
okay.
breaking the grid comes in, because there are places where, even though it's in time, it's not locked to this. It sometimes does this and this and this, and now we're back to the thing.
Yep.
And if you're playing to a grid, you're not going to do that. And if you're performing to a drum track, what I found is that the vocal, everything gets more urgent as a performer
It
and more
does.
rock and roll.
Yep.
Whereas when the drums have to meet the song as it was written in the room, then the singer can be singing quietly to you, but the drums are really they're really there, but they're
Yeah.
not taking the performance out of the room. And again, I'm not saying that the other way isn't good. I've had great experiences doing the thing where you record to a click track and then you record the drums to it and then you build everything from that. It's
Yep.
just on this record, I really wanted to, I wanted it to feel more
Organic.
human, almost again like the difference between a film performance and a stage performance. In a film performance, you get close-ups. Someone can talk to you like this.
Yep.
And I wanted a record that had that quality, as opposed to a record where, and there's
Yeah.
places where it explodes, but not that it lives there. And when, and it feels like if you take away that, then all of a sudden the record dies.
Yeah, it's not
I want.
showy or I just watched like the Nickelback documentary and it's like their songs are formulaic in that genre, even though that's kind of them naturally, but you're like, these are so written specifically for the radio, and I know they're perfectly timed and they're perfectly, whether they play it or enhance it later. Um, I follow the producer actually on Instagram. I've shot him a message too before, and it's you're right. So things, if you had the drum track, you feel like you have to almost like perform. It's tighter. It does get tighter, but if you're looking for what you were doing, more organic, relaxed, right? The drummer almost has to be like, oh, wait a minute, like you said, like he goes off a little bit here, so I have to relax or I have to push it, and
Mm-hmm.
that creates that's why when I listen to stuff I go, there is definitely a Beatles and Led Zeppelin and 70s feel, because that's what they did. The 80s with the programming, that's where it kind of started to go out a little bit, and then came back in the 90s with grunge, and then it went away again. So
Not just with grunge. The 90s was a good time for like there was, I
yeah, oh
think
yeah,
you know, Elliott Smith was doing some really interesting stuff. The whole scene that was happening out of Largo with John Bryan and Amy Mann, that was a really interesting thing. And but it did come from a more of a band driven. It was the last gasp of sort of the band driven, songwriter driven thing
yeah,
being anywhere near the center of popular culture.
yep,
Um, and yeah, it was an exciting time. I feel like most of the best bands of that era did not become the sort of radio mainstays like the Nickelbacks or Green Day or whatever. Not to take anything away from them, but um, for me, like a band like Jellyfish was the band of the 90s. They had 2 records and then had to go to Japan and start backing up Puffy Ami and playing on Disney tracks
yeah.
because the
The
world
industry
went,
changes, right?
well, went grunge and hip hop and just straight ahead formulaic pop. And none of those things are, again, all power to anyone who achieves success in the music business. And there probably is something that's good about moving away from a bunch of, you know, Tom Petty wannabes. No offense to all of us. That's not really but he's
Yeah.
sort of like the
You want 30 years of Tom
quintessential
Petty songs?
elderman. He's the sort of the quintessential elder. Him and Neil Young would be the sort of the elder statesman, rock and roll guys of the '90s,
Yeah.
who were current in the '90s, but were still kind of older guys. And then everyone else was sort of behind them with our Telecasters and our Mellotrons and
Mhm.
our Beatles harmonies. And, eventually, that gets tapped out. I hope that my record isn't so much in that vein that it sounds like it's I certainly tried not to sound like anything but me, but at the same time, my influences are there. And
Yeah,
as I
I
said,
hear that too.
Olympia Secret, I'm thinking of The Who, or Record Store. Definitely, I'm thinking of Tom Petty. That was a record. That was a track we recorded in the wake of his death, and so there was a very conscious effort to be like, oh, I want to write a song that had yeah in it,
Yeah,
like that's. I want to have one rock and roll song that's just like a little bit dumb, not in a bad way. It's like the Elvis Costello has a great line, "Don't you know how to be dumb?" And I
it's
feel like that's an
quirky.
advice for songwriters.
Quirky, that's what I
Yeah,
would use.
like
Yeah.
some
Yeah. And
um
So here on Palangi Studio of Rock here, and before you go, I always love to talk about gear because there's no radio shows out there that actually specifically talk about gear. So we did a little bit, but I was going to ask you because this is what I noticed with my ear. I wanted to know what type of microphone did you record your vocals with? Do you know the brand and the model?
Yeah, you know what? It depends which song. And
Okay.
on like I said, because I recorded every song.
What about the record store day one?
So it's not called Record Store Day; it's Record Store. But good, a lot of people
I
do
know.
that.
I watched the music video, so I'm like, I got that in my head.
uh, um, so with that one, that was with the guys from the band The Hard Way. We recorded that you know what? I don't.
Their setup.
That was their setup, but I don't think it was anything particularly fancy.
Okay.
It certainly wasn't like some sort of Neumann or anything like that.
Who do you have mix the
Uh,
record?
Most of it was mixed by a guy named Sheldon Gomberg, who it does have a very high-end studio. He works with people like Ricky Lee Jones and Ben Harper.
Okay.
He produces a lot of the Sweet Relief benefit albums. They just came out with one for Lowell George, and I have a track on that
Okay.
called Crazy Captain Gunboat Willie. But yeah, other than, well, the song Knew You was mixed by Ken Stringfellow. And every track besides Own Your Lips and Record Store Beyond and Knew You were mixed by Sheldon Gomberg in his
Okay.
studio in Los Angeles. And then Own Your Lips and Record Store were both mixed by guys named Skylar Blake and Scott Taylor, who were in a
Okay.
band called The
Those are
Hard
the
Way.
two that I
Yeah.
specifically listened to besides the Olympic one. And I was just
That's so
like,
funny.
I know. I swear, I don't know. It's because I do audio stuff too that I can pick that out with my ears subconsciously, just knowing that. Because I'm like, there's something going on here with his voice that's different.
Well, what's funny was those two tracks are the most, and this is not anything about their skill, but the most janky in terms of recording, in the sense that, so they didn't have my deal with them was, I'll buy your Pro Tools system and you have to produce two songs for me.
That's right. Okay.
And so the first one was Own Your Lips, and they were learning, like, that was the first thing they recorded on Pro Tools. And as I was saying, there's a whole learning
Yeah.
curve in learning
Yeah.
how to use Pro Tools. So there was all kinds of things that I'm sure they would never do. Like all the mistakes that you make the first time, they did on that track.
Okay.
But I love it. I love the way that track. And in fact, it's one of the things that I really enjoy about that track is that it has not a demo-ish feeling, but a definite, to me, sort of a lo-fi in the basement-y kind of
Yeah.
grittiness
Yeah.
that
Indie.
I really liked. And then Record Store, the mix of that's on the record and that's on the video, that's a mono mix. That's not even a stereo mix, because I didn't
Really?
like the stereo mix. I thought like the stereo mix was all over the place,
Oh wow.
and I just fell in love with the mono mix.
I'll have to
And
listen to
so
that
I
with
don't know who puts
headphones
out
on
mono
then.
tracks anymore. It's just like just a wall of sound.
That's
And
true. That's
you
true.
know, and I really like that too. And it's been very vindicating to me that those two tracks, which I kind of had, was a little bit worried about, that they might stand out as being lesser than the tracks that I recorded. Like I recorded the opening track at Sheldon Gomberg's studio with great musicians, a great rhythm section, playing it live. And is that going to, when Record Store comes on after that, are people going to feel like it's a letdown? But I've had the exact opposite. And it sort of it vindicates my point, which is that both of those tracks are full of mistakes and things that either an AI or an ambitious person who just wanted to do things perfectly to get them on the radio would
Yes.
never do.
Yes. I noticed that in the tracks.
Um,
But I just thought you were like, well, he's
yeah,
going for an old school feel, and that's how the other songs sound. And I
yeah.
get what he's doing. And, I was just curious with there's like a abnormal crisp to the tie ends in your voice. And I'm like, I know it's probably has to do something with your own natural voice, but there's some there's some added spice he does. He probably did in Pro Tools or mixing it after, or maybe he reamped it in some analog gear. I have no idea.
What
Could have
mic
been
do
the
you think I
mastering.
was? What mic do you think I was using? What was the mic that you thought of when you were listening?
Honestly, I don't know because a lot of people use condensers, but I'm like, it kind of sounds like a ribbon microphone too. Or it could be just a straightforward like a 58 or something like that they'd sing live with and through like some gear.
I have recorded a record once on a 57 because I heard the guys I was
A
working with heard
57. Oh yeah, those are like
yeah,
the technically the worst for vocals, but yeah.
but we heard that Peter Gabriel was recording his stuff on a 57.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well,
Through
let's
what
try that.
preamp? That'd be my
Yeah,
next
exactly.
question.
Yeah,
$1 million
that
preamp.
was when that's when I had guys in my band who were gearheads. I'm
Yeah.
a solo guy now. I know a lot of people who are gearheads, but like I said, my own performance setup is that
Yep.
that right there. That
Fenders. What kind of guitar is that
Telecaster
one?
and a it's a Fender Telecaster,
Okay.
90, probably 89, one of the last years they made them in America,
Yeah.
and a Vibrolux amp, no pedals, and that's what a lot of the guitar, most of well, that's entirely my guitar tone on the record is that entirely, and of course Sheldon
Yeah.
Sheldon put nice stuff on him, but I was pretty strict with him, like as little reverb as possible, as little like no he I didn't have to tell him not to auto tune. He knows like
Yeah.
that's his own rule. That's
Yeah.
why it's one of the ways we get along. Um, but I really like to keep things again. I like to keep things dry because everybody else is trying to hide their imperfections with effects, and I'm like, okay, well then I want to lean into the imperfections because I
Yeah.
want this to stand out, and especially if you're making putting a record out independently, um, I think you're just in a way better place making something that is a little bit less perfect but more unique than to have something that is just as good as the stuff that the record labels are making, because then why would anyone bother with your stuff?
Andras
Since they
Jones,
could get a
everybody.
better
He
version.
he he said it all. I could take that clip right there and use it for a quote. That was perfect. That was perfect, man. AJ, man. Well, thanks for being on Palangi Studio of Rock here. I want to
Oh,
ask
thank you, Frank.
what's coming up for you next here. If you have any acting roles, I know you got gigs coming up in the California area. I will say if you ever
Um,
come to upstate New York, definitely let me know and I'll come out and maybe do an
hey,
update.
let's set something up.
That'd be
Let's
cool.
set something up. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be doing a lot of touring in the next in
Okay.
this year and the next. Uh,
Maybe I can
I
open up
guess what
for
I
you.
should
I don't know.
maybe I'll open up for you. You probably have a draw in the Albany area. But I'm one of the things I'm doing for the first time this year is playing my music at horror conventions. I get invited to a lot of conventions because of Nightmare on Elm Street and the other horror films I've been in, and I've always had sort of an attitude that, oh well, that crowd is really they're into Dawkins and like more like
Yeah,
heavier
like
stuff,
metal
and yeah, they're not going to be into some weird singer songwriter cross between James Taylor and They Might Be Giants weirdo.
and the Beatles.
And yeah, and but now a lot of those people who are fans of that it's not just 18-year-old guys. It's actually a lot of women are fans of Nightmare on Elm Street, and their tastes are run to a little bit more of a sensitive style music, and a lot of I don't want to be even just say men and women. I just say that the audience for that franchise, I feel like, has matured with all of us.
Yeah. Yeah, and you
And
can sell your CDs there too. They can get into your music.
yeah, and I just this is the year that I am trying to introduce that community of people who already know me from Nightmare on Elm Street to the music that I've been making, since before I made that film.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'll be playing at conventions I'm going to be at Minnesota Crypticon in September. I'm going to be at um, at a horror expo in Hampton, Virginia. It later in September, I'm going to be at a horror convention, the Monster Palooza in Ottumwa, Iowa in October. And in November, I'm going to London to perform at the London Comic Con. And I'll be
That'll
playing
be cool.
shows in the area around all of those things. And so if you're a fan of that stuff, I hope you come out to one of those cons. And I do hope you'll check out my music. It's at previouslyyours.com. That's my website, previously yours. And I hop you'll put a link in this so people can check on that. That's where you can find all my records. You can find info about my films, about my book, about Radio 8 Ball, and other podcasts that I've hosted and produced. And maybe even some information about this podcast when I promote it, when it comes out.
There you go, folks. Well, I appreciate on the show here. Maybe we can we do something. I like to do little I don't want to call it catch ups here in the future, even small one. I do like little playlist shows too. Like, what's your favorite rock songs? I would love to know that sometime.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be cool.
Well, sometime. I'm not going to tell you now, but
Sometime. We're not giving
I
it
already
away right
thought
now,
of
folks.
my answers.
There you go. Well, have a good, it was 4th of July here recording it on today. I know this is going to come out later, but happy 4th of July, even though it's already going to, pass here. But let me tell you,
Well,
man.
you celebrated independence by having an independent artist on.
Exactly. Two independent artists.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. You got to stay indie, man. So that's the way I feel.
Well, you have to, because you have to.
And it's independent radio, folks. Thanks for supporting so much. Make sure you go over to our social media, chime in, let us know who do you want for future interviews, and you can go over to our YouTube pages and social medias to see previous videos. And we have a vault here too on Spotify if you guys want to go in and listen to 3 Days Grace. I've had people from Puddle of Mud, Saving Abel, all these cool rock bands, man. So, all right, guys. Palangi Studio of Rock. Keep rocking, everybody.
Keep rocking.
See you guys.